Strongman tiebreakers. Are they fair, and how do we change them? So what am I talking about? Oleksii Novikov and Martins Licis this year at World's Strongest Man were tied on points in second place. But Martins gets the second place over Oleksii Novikov because he placed higher on the last event. Didn't win that event, let's point out, but he placed higher out of the two athletes.
Yeah.
Oleksii Novikov won 3 events in that final. Martins didn't win any. If we went on the old ruling, where it went on countback in a tied situation, Oleksii would have come second in that competition. And we've put a bit of research into how things would have changed both ways in the past.
Yeah.
And it seems Oleksii Novikov keeps getting screwed over with this rule.
It's a rule against Oleksii. We know that's not actually true. But just to go into a little bit more detail about how the rules compare. So what it used to be, like you said, it was countback. So where athletes were tied at the end of a competition on the same amount of points, they would look and see who had the most event wins out of the two.
Yeah, it would actually go down.
Yeah, so if neither did, then they go into who had the most second places, third. No matter what it took, who had the edge over the other athlete. So it rewarded consistently placing higher in events.
Yes.
Whereas now, obviously, it awards you being the best at the final event more so. Now,
Which
it's not actually...
99 times out of 100 seems to be the Atlas stones.
And I was going to say, it's not actually an Atlas stone rule. That's where some of the confusion comes in. It's the last event regardless of what the last event is, but it just so happens that the last event is nearly always Atlas stones. So you are rewarded for being better at Atlas stones or having a better stone run in that particular competition.
Yeah, it would seem that way. And obviously with the stone off in heats at World's Strongest Man and then the stones being the decider in 99% of competitions these days, being good at Atlas stones is giving athletes a huge advantage.
So the rule changed after the 2010 World's Strongest Man when Zdrunas Savickas and Brian Shaw tied for first place on 51.5 points. At that point, countback was the rule, so the referees go back and look at their overall performances. Zdrunas Savickas had 2 first places, so did Brian Shaw. So Zdrunas had 1 tie for first place, so did Brian Shaw. So then they had to look at second places. Zdrunas had 1 second place, Brian had none. That's how Zdrunas won. So that year, unlike other years, they had to go pretty deep in to determine who the winner was. That was deemed too confusing for the general public audience who aren't actually strongman fans, which is why they decided to change the rules and go on the results of the last events, regardless of what happened when people have the same points. It's very confusing.
It is very confusing, but I don't think it's that hard to educate people on a countback system.
No, I don't either. So what we did was look back at all of the World's Strongest Man competitions prior to 2010, where there was a tiebreak situation. Would the final event rule have changed any of the outcomes?
So we only looked at top 3 positioning. So there may be others, but we didn't kind of look too deep into this.
Yeah.
There is only one occasion where results would have changed in this. It's very rare that you finish a competition with particularly the top 2 or top 3 athletes on the exact same points. But back in 1992, Ted van der Paar became the world's strongest man. In second place, we had Magnus Ver Magnusson tied on points with Jamie Reeves. Now, if it was based on the new rule of the winner or the highest place out of those two on the last event, Jamie Reeves would have placed second that year's World's Strongest Man.
But because it was on countback, Magnus Ver placed second. And to be fair, Magnus Ver had 3 event wins in that final. I think he deserved second place.
I totally agree with you. I am a fan, particularly when people win events.
Yes.
I think winning an event should have a higher level of impact.
Yeah, there is an argument for that. And we've seen it. A lot of people saying maybe there could be an extra point. You talked about how, was it in decathlons?
Yeah, decathlon, they score based on performance. So the better you do on each individual event, you get more points. Whereas in strongman, you could be miles better than second place, but you still only get that 1 point advantage.
So Giants Life adopted the same rules as World's Strongest Man, which is fair because they're a qualifier for
Yeah, Giants Life are the qualifier, so their rule set needs to be the same as World's Strongest Man, so I totally get that.
Yeah.
And there's been a few situations, once again, where Oleksii Novikov seems to be on the receiving end of these rules.
Yeah, definitely. So last year at the 2021 Arnold UK, Evan and Oleksii were tied for first place on 42 points. Evan won the competition because he beat Oleksii on the stones, even though he didn't actually win the stones, but Oleksii had 3 event wins in that competition as well. So it seems like you're severely punished when you have inconsistencies. If you really drop at some point, and if it happens to be the stones, you're punished further. So there's one occasion where if we were using the old countback rules, Oleksii would have won.
How many events did Evan win in that competition?
None.
So Oleksii, even though he won 3 events,
Yeah.
that one performance, and Evan didn't win the stones,
Yeah.
he still got pushed down into second place.
Just because he placed behind Evan on the stones. And the only other example I could find was the 2019 Giants Live World Tour final. Now, for second place, Ben Brunning was tied again with Oleksii Novikov on points. Ben beat Oleksii on the stones, so Ben ended up taking second with Oleksii pushed down to third. But if it was done on the countback, Oleksii had 2 second place finishes in that competition, whereas Ben's best finish in an event was third. It's really hard.
It is confusing. It is confusing. And it seems to be Oleksii is the man on the receiving end of this quite often. And if we go on to the stone off in certain competitions, if we remember 2019 World's Strongest Man final, Oleksii, I believe, was 7 points ahead of Trey.
He was 7 points ahead. That was at a time where there was no, there was less of an advantage for whoever
There
was
was
in
no
second place.
advantage.
Okay, yeah, there you go then.
And also, Oleksii, if you think you're 7 points ahead in a group of 6,
Yeah.
you're not catchable.
No.
You know, even if someone won that next event, you could come minus 1 point and you're still going to get through.
Yeah, he should have been untouchable technically. And obviously the stone off was only introduced in 2017. Prior to that, it would have been a regular stone run. And Oleksii, like you say, he wouldn't have had to touch him. That's why they changed it though, because it didn't make for a good show when people were just going,
Well, that's the reason the stone off was brought in. They wanted to try and keep things entertaining because you started getting to the point where guys that were winning their groups easily were just taking it easy, as they would.
However, we say that, but this year the guys who won their group easily were able to take it easy on the what was it called, the wrecking ball. So it's just pushed it back one event.
I agree. I mean, and I've seen many situations where we get to the stones and the group could still be really exciting if all the athletes could compete. I've been in that situation myself. So I'm coming from a little bit of a selfish standpoint. I totally, and this is why we're kind of putting it out to you guys, really. I want to know what you guys think of the ruling, especially when you look at a competition like this year where he won 3 of the events in the final.
And that's not to take anything away from Martins. The rules are what they are, but it is interesting when you look at the rule change, how it would have changed things.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And in this situation, what do you think the decider should be?
Yeah.
Should we go on countback? Should it be based on the last event? Should there be a deciding
Extra
event?
events, yes.
Things like that. There's all these debates going on. People have their opinions. I want to get your opinions, guys. So comment below. Let us know what you think. Should Oleksii be second at World's Strongest Man this year? This is nothing against Martins. Martins is an incredible athlete, wins so many titles, and to me is one of the absolute best in the world. But it's just in this situation, we're using these two as our example. And Oleksii, how many times is he going to be on a list like this? Because stones, to be fair to him, are not his best event.
No, but there's so much emphasis on stones now. And do you think that's fair? Do you think, because all strongmen should be able to do stones if they know they're in the competition all the time? Should stones be in the competition all the time?
My argument with that is when we go to who is the strongest in the world, we cannot compare who is the strongest based on one event.
No.
Because how do we do it? Do we say Julius Maddox is the strongest man in the world because he's the best bencher? Do we say Tallahassee is the strongest in the world because he's the best Olympic lifter? There's so many arguments to who is the best because lots of people are good at different things. The way you are physically built gives you a massive advantage in certain events.
Yeah.
Oleksii is a good stone lifter, but he has physical disadvantages against someone like Tom Stoltman,
Massively,
who has longer arms. He's taller. He just has a biological advantage when it comes to lifting Atlas stones. On other events, Oleksii is incredible and beats these guys.
Yeah.
And it's the same with strongman all round. All these athletes are so talented, have so many great events. We are now putting so much emphasis on one. And I know this video is about the decider, and the decider is the last event, not necessarily Atlas stones.
But it always is the Atlas stones.
But every occasion is pretty much the Atlas stone. So I would like to see a little bit more variety in that department.
Maybe there's an argument for just changing what the last event is and having it different each time. But then you kind of rule out the 4 reps unless they're doing it for timed reps.
I don't know what you're talking about now.
So I'm talking about what the last event would be. Okay. So rather than have Atlas stones all the time, should we just switch it around and have a different event each time in the final? Does it have to be Atlas stones? Must it end on Atlas stones?
I don't think it needs to end on Atlas stones. I don't think Atlas stones need to even be the last event. You could put the Atlas stones as the 3rd event.
Yeah.
And then when someone's done, they don't have tacky all over them, so you can celebrate properly.
Hug people without risk, yes.
So lots of things to kind of discuss in the comments below. Let us know your thoughts, guys. Do you prefer the traditional countback rule, which was used up until 2010, or are you more of a fan of the result on the last event being the decider? Let us know, and we'll be back with more Strength Action soon.